Carlos Nelson with Cascade Media Group, and today we have Dr. Linwood Tauheed, and he's working on a couple of things in our community. One is Malcolm X and a couple of others, but I want to get to where the tire meets the road. Welcome to the show, Dr. Tauheed.
Thank
Tell
you.
our
Thank you for
audience a
being here.
little bit about yourself, where you come from, how you was raised, some of your mentors, and what you do for a living. I
Mhm.
think you retired right now. Are you still
No, I'm still
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 active?
young.
All right,
Mhm.
run it down to our community.
Well, okay. My name is Linwood Tauheed. I'm as a profession not retired. I'm a professor of economics at the University of Missouri Kansas City, UMKC. I've been there for as a professor. I've been there since 2004, so 21 years there. But I've been a student there since the 70s. I started maybe 78, 79 as a student there and studying computer science. And I graduated with a bachelor's degree in computer science and mathematics in 1984. At that time, I had already been involved in working in that field. And so 84, I graduated. 87, I started my own company which was called Tauheed Associates. It was AKA Computer Systems Engineering. So I started my own company. We did software development, systems integration work. And then in 1997, I closed my company and went back to school, back to UMKC to get a degree in economics. First a master's degree. My intention was to get a PhD, which I did. I became interested in economic development while I was in business because I was a member of the Black Chamber of Commerce of Greater Kansas City. I was a president for a year. But prior to that, for a number of years, I was chair of the Business and Economic Development Committee. And in that process, I got interested in economic development. So I liked what I did in computing. I was very good at it. My company was growing and so forth. But I looked at what I was doing in computing as kind of a personal success. But I wanted that success to be. I wanted what I was doing to be. I thought more relevant to the community, and I thought economic development would be a way to do that. So I went back to UMKC and got a degree in economics and PhD. And then started teaching there. I had already started teaching at Penn Valley in Longview after I got my master's degree, but then I completed my doctorate in 2005 and had already been teaching there for a couple of years uh, by that time. And so I came onto the regular faculty, eventually received tenure. And so I've been there 21 years. So as far as occupation, I'm an economist. Um, UMKC has an interesting and a unique economics program. So what people think about economics is kind of not what we do as economists at UMKC. We have a worldwide reputation for the kind of economics that we do. I myself, I am what is called an institutional economist, and most people have no idea what that means. We could talk a little bit about it. But I teach institutional economics, both intermediate and advanced. I teach community economic development. I teach a history of economic thought and a number of other topics. I teach undergrads and grad students, including doctoral students as well. And I my work outside, not outside of school, but connected to that, is in community economic development. And we can talk about that, what that means. Community, that term, community economic development, has a meaning that doesn't really comport with the way that I approach that topic. And so we should probably talk about that as well. Now, ironically, maybe ironically, coincidentally, not ironically, this April to the April now, or past April, was my 50th year here in Kansas City. I moved to Kansas City from Philadelphia in 1975, April 1975. And at the time, I had two children, two sons, and then I've since my wife and I at the time had a daughter who was born here in Kansas City. So my three children were they're all adults now, of course, and they are all still living here in Kansas City. But my family, other than my children and my ex-wife, are in Philadelphia. I have a pretty large family. I was one of eight children. I had six sisters and one brother in Philadelphia. And so that's where I grew up for. When I came to Kansas City in 75, I was 25 years old. So all of my adult life, well, my beginning adult life was in Philadelphia. Most of my other development has have been here in Kansas City. So I can consider Kansas City my home, but I do but
That's
I
both of us. I'm from New York. You beat me
okay,
here by 3 years. I came
right,
in
right,
78.
right. And when I came here, I came here to teach school. I was in the Nation of Islam. I came here to teach at the University of Islam at the time, and just decided to stay here. Kansas City was a good place to raise my children, particularly when you compare raising children in a place like Philadelphia. I mean, it's a city that I love to visit. I don't think I would
That's
not want.
how I feel about New
Yeah,
York.
yeah. I love New York. Every time I go to Philly, I try to get up to New York for a couple of days. I was just in New York for a week, just a couple of weeks ago as well. We can talk about that. I did a presentation at the United Nations there, and on community economic development
At the United Nations.
at the UN. Yes, it was a conference. There's an organization connected with the UN. It's called the Permanent Forum for People of African Descent. They were having their fourth yearly session at the UN and surrounding areas in New York. And so I and a student of mine, I won't mention his name because I haven't given permission, but he's completing his doctorate dissertation in a week or so, in a week, on a dissertation on reparations. And so he and I were invited to give presentations to UN folks from all over the world on reparations and other work that we're involved in.
Our approach to reparations now, from my understanding, and I haven't looked into this for about 6 months,
Mm-hmm.
uh, because the legal system has changed some
Mm-hmm.
things, and we almost had to start from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I haven't done any research, but the things that I do know is that what's going on.
Well, yeah, there is certainly a change and a challenge. I mean, there's always been challenges to the idea of reparations for formerly enslaved Africans here in this country, and then of course there's an international reparations movement as well with former colonies of European countries that are seeking reparations, restitution, and repair from their former colonizers. And so European countries, pretty much all of them, I don't know, there may be a few that were not involved in enslavement and colonization in Africa, but those countries that are being
Do you
um,
have any? Do you have
pressured.
any thoughts on Captain Torre, Burkina Faso? Because Cascade Media Group, we've been trying to work with them. They're
Mhm.
asking for the diaspora to come home. What do you think about what he's doing? And uh, the last couple of days, I was asking a lot of high-profile politicians and people that are supposed to be in the know. Do you know who Captain Torre is? Do you
Oh
know
yeah, yes, yes.
Burkina Faso? They like Burkina what?
Mm.
It's a total disconnect of what's going on as it relates to our community, uh, not just here, our Mother Africa and the diaspora.
Yeah.
Could you
What?
speak on that a little bit?
Yeah. What I knew about Burkina Faso before current times was some time ago, around 2010, when I participated in a ceremony called a grief ritual that was conducted by a woman from Burkina Faso named Sobon Fusome, who has since transitioned. So she was from Burkina Faso, and Burkina Faso was has noted as a very poor country, as many countries in Africa are, as many countries in the world are, that have been former colonies of Europe and current neo-colonies of Europe. And so that's my knowledge of Burkina Faso was kind of limited to my experience with her process. And then the countries of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, those countries that are a strip of countries going west to east in Africa that kind of separates North Africa from what is called sub-Saharan Africa. So that part is called the Sahel. They begin to make noise of independence from France. These are former French colonies, the Francophone colonies, and Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali began. They kicked the French out and began to declare that they had sovereignty over their own natural resources. Excuse me. And they began to develop a plan to take advantage of what they had not been able to take advantage before, which is their own natural resources and their ability to make a living and to increase the well-being of their people. And so that's a revolutionary movement in the sense that it is a stark break from the way that African countries have continued to be related to European countries as neo-colonies. So, the idea in the 1950s and the 60s as African nations were declaring their own independence was that was a time when Africa would begin to thrive and be able to declare itself sovereign from European control and then continue to take advantage of its own resources. It did not turn out that way. And there's an economic discussion that we can have about the basis of that, not just military power, not just the fact that the former colonies maintain, let's say, troops in African countries to put down a possible revolution or attempts to overthrow their governments that they may have wanted to do so in order to benefit from the resources. But there's a very much an economic component related to who controls the money supply in those countries. And the Sahel countries, the Francophone countries, were at independence, were still saddled with the requirement to participate in the French monetary system. So the French created a money item, um, a money thing, as one of my colleagues calls it, called the colonial franc of Africa. Well, it was called the colonial franc of Africa when these countries, the Sahel countries, were colonies. When they became independent, they changed the name to an acronym, the CFA or the CFA. But it was still the colonial franc of Africa, and it was still a money supply that was under the control of the French, which means that, for example, if a country wants to increase its own money supply because it needs a greater circulation of money in order to do economic development, they had to get permission from the French to do so. The French was in control of the money supply. They were, in essence, the central bank. And so what what has occurred recently is not just with these countries, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, throwing the French out, but also there's a process where they are taking control of their resources and taking control of their money supply so that they are not um, dependent or required by anyone outside of their own country to maintain a money supply that benefits others instead of themselves. So it's a long story in a sense in terms of how that monetary sovereignty, that delinking, that independence is going to occur. It's not an overnight thing, but it is in progress. And in Burkina Faso, that progress is being accelerated and initiated by Ibrahim Traore.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about Malcolm X.
Sure. I want to apologize. I've got a bit of a hoarseness today, and so I'm trying to get through this. I've got some water here. I'll drink a little bit of that. But yes, Malcolm X. Now, um, in of course, Malcolm was a member of the Nation of Islam, and in Philadelphia, when I joined the Nation of Islam in 1969, I was really very much maybe influenced by Malcolm X's example, even though he had been dead, assassinated 5 or 6 years before I even knew anything about the Nation of Islam. But but of course, Malcolm had a very deep connection to the Nation of Islam in Philadelphia, and then of course in New York, right, which was his headquarters. And when he was in the Nation of Islam as a minister and national spokesperson, there were many persons in Philadelphia who knew him and knew him personally, and had come in contact with him and were influenced by his his brilliance, his style of oratory, his analysis skills, his ability to debate and confront those who were derisive of the Nation of Islam's program. And by his example, he set an example for other brothers in the Nation of Islam as to how you should carry yourself. And so even though he was no longer with us, and when I joined the Nation in '69 and became interested in '68, his example was was profound. I mean, I'll say this, and I don't mean to be insensitive or discourteous, but the Nation of Islam would not be the Nation of Islam that we think of today without Malcolm. Prior to his becoming the national spokesperson, conversion in prison, and becoming the national spokesperson, the Nation of Islam was very much a religious organization. Now, that's not being derisive. It was a religion. It was an organization that focused on religion, that in many sense, in a traditional way, like Christianity, more like Christianity than Islam, because that was the plan, to attract African Americans who are more Christian than Islamic. It was focused on kind of the end times, what's going to happen when God comes and destroys this country. Um, when Malcolm's program and let's say transformation of the nation as it transformed itself became a much more focus on the Black community, on liberation, on self-determination, on the Black community, and on the here and now, as opposed to waiting for change later. And it was his focus, his changing of the nation was much more on what we need to do as a community, regardless of whether or not we are Muslim or Christian or atheist or any other religion. What we need to do in order to uplift the Black community, in order to free it from the neo-colonialism, from the neo-slavery that we were a part of. And so that's what attracted me to the Nation of Islam. And I was attracted to the Nation of Islam primarily. I was one of the founders of the Black Panther Party in Philadelphia. And so when that process came and went, and there was a reason that it came and went. The initial party in Philadelphia was started in 1968. We dissolved it in 1968 because of some some problems. It was restarted in Philadelphia in 1969, and by that time I had joined the Nation of Islam. So I had a Black Power, Black nationalist orientation, if you will. Although the Black Panther Party is not necessarily in that context, that was where I was attracted to the nation because of the I guess the Black Power, the Black nationalist ideology of Malcolm more than I was attracted by the religious aspects. And I still, in terms of mentors, um, yeah, he would be one of my mentors, and we get mentors not just from the people who we know, but also from the things they leave behind.
What
In
is
terms,
this anniversary about?
this anniversary is about the 100th anniversary of his birth. He was born in on May 19th, 1925, and so this is the 100th anniversary, the centennial of his birth.
What type of festivities, if
There's a multitude of events around the country and around the world that are being organized to recognize that centennial of his birth. You know, Malcolm started out in Omaha, Nebraska. I've been up to his birth site a number of times, and he was born in Omaha, Nebraska. His parents were members of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, Marcus Garvey's organization. They were members, and his father was killed by white supremacists. I believe they were members of the Ku Klux Klan when he was a child, and his mother was terribly destroyed mentally by that process. And so when he left Omaha and went to Detroit, he got involved in criminal activity. And so he was in Detroit. He was known as Detroit Red. That was his moniker. He was a petty thief, stick-up artist, a pimp, and was part of the criminal scene until he was then arrested, sent to prison, and in prison converted to the Nation of Islam. And one of the things, of course, that the Nation of Islam leaves behind, has in its legacy, is its legacy of converting men and also women who had fallen astray of the law, Black men going to prison and then being converted into the Nation of Islam, and being encouraged to move away from that type of lifestyle. And Malcolm, of course, did that. He was always a reader. He was always someone who wanted to absorb knowledge. And in his process of being in prison and reading, he began to read not just about the U.S. but about the world issues and so forth. He became quite a historian and philosopher in that process. So when he was released from prison, having converted to the nation in prison, he became a minister and then eventually the national spokesperson for the Nation of Islam. And so, that itself is a story of a man who was born, who had a parent killed and another destroyed by that death, who responded in a way that many might respond, and just becoming kind of a menace to society, if you will, but then having an opportunity to see the world in a different way, taking advantage of that, transforming his life, and being transformed by by the fortuitous
So
circumstance.
what's taking place here in Kansas City?
What's taking place here? One of the things that's taking place here in Kansas City is that there is a celebration of the Malcolm X centennial. It's being sponsored by, well, at least one of the sponsors is the public library, Kansas City Public Library. Another sponsor is the Kansas City, the chapter of
In
the
Buff?
United Front, yeah, in Buff is also a sponsor, and I believe there are a couple of other sponsors of it. But there's a celebration of his life that's occurring here in Kansas City. I've been asked to participate and to write something on that, and I've done so. In fact, in 1999, when the Malcolm X stamp was issued by the Postal Service, I was asked by the postmaster to give a lecture on Malcolm X, which I did at UMKC. It was 1999. I was an econ student at the time in '99, but I believe I was also teaching at Penn Valley Economics and completed my master's. So I gave a talk at UMKC. It was very well attended talk on Malcolm X and talked about that process of transformation. I think I discussed how I saw that transformation in the context of an African philosophical system that
Tell,
was. Yeah.
tell me this. What else are you working on? Tell our community what else you're working on and you're interested before we close out.
Okay. Well, my primary research work as an economist is in community economic development. And what I mean by that is not what the business school might mean, which is kind of real estate and business development, mostly real estate development. When I use, say, community economic development, I'm talking about the process of empowering. Well, empowering is not a really good word. A process of taking of helping members of a community to understand that the development of their community has to be in their control. It has to be led by them. They may benefit from relationships with persons outside of the community, but it has to be led by them. And so my work in community economic development is about helping communities to understand how they develop that leadership, how they begin to take control of their own community in that development, with an understanding that community economic development is much broader than economics. You can't just worry, you can't just do business development, you can't just do job development. You have to do development on all areas, education, health. The process that I have been a part of, which actually was executed in Kansas City in 2009. That was called weed development. Some of your viewers may remember the weed development process. It was a
They got
process.
the We Development Credit Union, I think.
Absolutely, the We Development Credit Union
Yeah,
came
because I
out.
did a little commercial for them.
Yeah, the We Development Credit Union was a project that was initiated by a community from the We Development process, and it took a long time to get that credit union up and running.
Boy,
But
10 years.
yeah,
Boy,
yeah,
you
yeah,
worked on that process?
I did. Yes.
Ajamu, see, I didn't know who was involved, but
Yeah.
I know it. Man, it was like
Yeah.
every year I'm like, Ajamu, y'all got that together yet? Y'all got that together yet?
Yeah, it took a lot of hard work and persistence and patience, perseverance more than patience, I guess, to get that done. But the redevelopment process is a process by which communities can think about what they want to do, think about the resources they have a vision for what they want their community to look like, and then engage in the process of strategic planning to get those things done. And so my work right now, in the past, has been kind of in the U.S. context, right, in the local context mostly. But my work now is expanding out into an international context. So I'm looking forward to doing that redevelopment work in other countries in the African diaspora. Uh, well, in countries in Africa and also countries that where members of the African diaspora live, which is of course all over the world. So I'm looking forward to doing that process internationally, not just locally. And there's a significant process of recognizing that the African diaspora is diverse. We are everywhere, and so we are multicultural. If you want to know use that term, and so community economic development has to recognize that communities are different. We are, we are united in common unity. We are a community because of our African heritage, but our diversity is actually what makes us strong. We are everywhere in this world. We are. Um,
To me, we are this world.
we are the world. Yes, if you want to use that, we
Yeah,
are.
if we don't walk out of Africa, none of these other races exist.
Well, absolutely. Of course, historically, all humans, all Homo sapiens, are origined from Africa. There would be no Homo sapiens uh, uh, except for our
I think
development.
this is the perfect place to end this. Um, it was I'm Jim Watts. I don't know whether you know Jim Watts, but
Jimmy, yes.
Jim Watts is always because he's co-founder of What's Up Kansas City. He's always ending his interviews. It was a plum pleasing pleasure having you on the show. I'd be like, Jim, cut it out, man. Cut it
well,
out.
well, Jim was a salesman as well, so
Right.
so
You do what you
that's
do.
a diversity
But
thing.
then, as we always close, when you invest in your community,
Mm-hmm.
you're really just investing in yourself.
Oh,
Good
absolutely.
day.
This is brought to you by Kansas City Business Association, working to improve our community.